The world was not born, it was being built. To the millions of adventurers who delved into its dungeons and charted its continents, this was a philosophical concept, a creation myth whispered by priests. To Elian, it was a literal, tangible, and often frustrating reality. He was a world forger, and the world was his workshop. Unlike the mighty warriors who shattered mountains or the cunning archmages who rewrote the laws of physics with a word, Elian's power was quieter, more foundational. He didn't conquer the world, he created it. His system interface wasn't a list of combat skills and flashy spells, but a sprawling, infinitely complex design suite. He saw the world in wireframes and potential energy grids, in ley line conduits and ecological resource nodes. His class was one of the rarest, a legacy of the progenitors who had laid down the initial code of existence. Name, Elian class, Apprentice World Forger, Level 3, 410 1000 QXP. Primary attributes, Imagination, IMG, 15 System Lore, LOR, 18. Resonance, Res, 12 Willpower. YL, 14 Core Skills, Conceptualize, Active. Open the design interface to draft a new geographical, ecological, or metaphysical concept. Cost, 10 mana per hour. Geological Sculpting. Rank F, Shape raw earth and stone. Limited to basic hills, valleys, and caves. Basic Hydrology. Rank F, Create small bodies of fresh water like ponds and streams. Flora Seeding. Rank F, Populate an area with mundane, non-magical plant life. Lesser Bestiary Creation. Rank F, Design and spawn simple low-level creatures. CR 1-3. His experience points were not earned through slaughter. They were QXP, Quality Experience Points, awarded by the system based on the integrity, balance, and elegance of his creations. A perfectly balanced pond ecosystem that adventurers found aesthetically pleasing might grant him 50 QXP. A clumsily designed cave that caused rock slides and had poor monster pathing could actually cost him QXP. It was a demanding, unforgiving profession that Elian's current project was a testament to his low rank. A small pastoral meadow meant to serve as a beginner-friendly tutorial zone just outside the capital city of Ethel. He'd spent 3 weeks on it, meticulously sculpting gentle, rolling hills, seeding them with a dozen varieties of soft grass, and populating the area with what he called the fluffy-tailed squirrel, a creature so benign its only skill was acorn hiding. It was tedious, unglamorous work. He stood on a hill of his own making, his worn leather boots planted firmly in the soft turf he'd designed. He opened his interface, a semi-transparent blue screen hovering in his vision. The meadow was rendered in a glowing green wireframe. System metrics scrolled by on the right. Zone designation, Whisperwind Meadow. Current stability, 98.7%, ecological balance, 99.2%, adventurer engagement index, AEI. Low, as intended. QXP accrual rate, plus 0.1, QXP, hour it was fine, stable, boring. It would serve its purpose, guiding new adventurers toward the concept of quests and exploration without any real danger. But it lacked soul. It lacked resonance, that ineffable quality that made a place feel alive and ancient, even if it had only been coded into existence yesterday. A chime echoed in his mind, the sound of an incoming system directive. It wasn't a quest in the traditional sense, but a work order from the Forgers Guild, the semi-divine bureaucracy that oversaw the world's continued creation. Guild mandate, new landmass forging. Designation, Shard 734, the Sunken Maw. Description: a new continental shard has been released from the progenitor vault for integration. The shard is currently a blank slate of primordial essence. An apprentice is required to perform the initial terraforming and lay the foundational ecology. Tier, entry level, level 5+ recommended. Objective, forge a stable, functional C tier. Danger zone suitable for adventurers of levels 10 to 20. Primary requirement, the zone must feature a significant dungeon environment. Reward: 5,000 QXP, Genesis Shard, access to Tier 2 design palettes. Elian's breath caught in his throat. 5,000 QXP was enough to jump him several levels, but it was the other rewards that truly staggered him. Tier 2 palettes meant access to magical flora, more complex bestiary options, and advanced geological tools. And Genesis Shard. That was a holy grail for a forger. It was a piece of the original unwritten code of the world, a catalyst, that could elevate a creation from merely functional to truly sublime. But the recommendation was for level 5. He was only level 3. Taking this on was a risk. A poorly executed C-tier zone could be a QXP sinkhole, a black mark on his permanent record that would haunt his career for decades. He looked around at his perfect, sterile meadow. He saw his future. Decades of crafting fluffy squirrels and gentle hills forever stuck in the tutorial zones of the world, never creating anything of meaning. He would be a footnote in the epic saga being written every day by the adventurers who would one day stroll through his work without a second thought. He couldn't accept that. With a deep breath and a surge of determination that sent a tremor through his willpower stat, he accepted the mandate. The world dissolved. The familiar green hills and blue sky of Ethel vanished, replaced by a swirling, silent void of gray. He was in the workshop, the space between spaces where new realities were born. Before him floated a vast, amorphous island of shimmering, pearlescent energy. It was a blank canvas, a formless chunk of potential waiting for a hand to shape it. This was Shard 734. Elian's interface expanded, new tools and palettes, still grayed out, populating the menus. A new window was dominant. Shard 734. Integration. Phase 1. Conceptualization. Current state. Primordial essence. Unstable. Objective. Define a core concept to stabilize the shard. Warning. The core concept will define all future development. Choose wisely. The sunken maw. The name suggested something aquatic, something dangerous and deep. A coastal region, perhaps, with a great chasm or underwater cave system. He thought of cliffs, crashing waves, and hidden grottos. He thought of creatures that hunted in the twilight depths, of forgotten ruins swallowed by the sea. He selected the conceptualize tool. His hands moved, not in the physical world, but through the menus of his mind. He sketched out the rough shape of the landmass, a rugged coastline shaped like a jagged crescent, enclosing a deep bay. In the center of the bay, a vast, swirling whirlpool, the dungeon, the maw. He submitted the core concept. Core concept registered, the Tide Eater's Coast, stabilizing primordial essence. Success. Shard 734 has been anchored to the primary world grid. Phase 1 complete. 200 QXP. The gray void around him solidified. The pearlescent energy of the shard resolved into a vast expanse of barren, gray rock under a perpetually overcast sky. The air was cold, sterile, smelling of ozone and wet stone. It was ugly, formless, but it was real. It was his. Elian smiled. The real work was about to begin. Forging a world was a process of layers, an act of creation that began at the very bones of the land and worked its way up to the smallest blade of grass. Elian's first task on the Tide Eater's Coast was to give it shape. He activated geological sculpting, his F-rank skill feeling woefully inadequate for the scale of the task. His interface transformed into a topographical map, a grid of polygons representing the flat, boring surface of the shard. He was like a sculptor standing before a mountain of uncarved marble. He started with the coastline. He pulled at the polygons, raising them up, creating towering sheer cliffs of granite. He varied the height and texture, adding jagged peaks and lower, weathered bluffs to make it look natural. He used a noise filter tool to introduce random imperfections, the kind of erosion that would normally take centuries, giving the cliffs an immediate sense of age and history. Every successful application of a tool, every aesthetically pleasing result, trickled in a few QXP. A clumsy move that made a cliff face look too uniform would cost him. It was a delicate dance of artistry and system mechanics. Next, he carved out the beaches, long stretches of dark volcanic sand nestled between the cliffs. He spent an entire day just on the rock formations, creating sea stacks, lonely pillars, of stone just offshore, and treacherous reef-like shallows. He wanted the coastline to feel dangerous, a place where ships could easily be dashed to pieces. With the landmass shaped, he turned to the water. Basic hydrology was only meant for ponds and streams, but the mandate had temporarily unlocked a higher-tier version of the skill. He designated the vast, empty basin of the bay and began to fill it. The system took over, rendering a massive volume of salt water that crashed against his newly formed cliffs. The sound of it, a low, roaring hiss, was the first true noise on the shard, and it sent a shiver of pride down Elian's spine. The centerpiece, the sunken maw itself, was the most complex part. It couldn't just be a hole in the ocean floor. It needed to be a true dungeon. He conceptualized a vast underwater cave network, a labyrinth of interconnected tunnels and chambers, all spiraling down into a massive central abyss. The entrance was the whirlpool on the surface, a perpetual vortex that would pull adventurers and unsuspecting ships down into the depths. To create it, he had to work in cross-sections, sculpting the negative space of the caverns out of the rock beneath the seabed. He carved out vast grottos lit by bioluminescent fungi, tight claustrophobic tunnels that would test an adventurer's nerve, and huge echoing chambers that could house a monstrous boss. He even designed a few secrets: a hidden tunnel behind, a waterfall in one of the air-filled caves, a pressure plate puzzle that would open a secret treasure vault. These were the details that the system rewarded, the little touches that elevated a dungeon from a simple monster grind into a true experience. Geological and hydrological foundation complete. Zone integrity 85%, unstable due to lack of ecosystem. Adventurer pathing analysis, 34 viable routes detected, 2 hidden areas integrated. QXP gained 1,200. He was now level 4. The progress was exhilarating. Now came the part that truly brought a zone to life: the ecology. He opened the flora seeding and lesser bestiary creation menus. The mandate had unlocked a new palette: coastal and abyssal. The options were far more exciting than the simple grasses and squirrels he was used to. He started on the cliffs and beaches. He seeded tough, salt-resistant grasses, gnarled, windswept, trees that he named ironwood benders, and clusters of sharp, purple-flowered bushes he called spikethorn. He added kelp forest to the shallows and draped glowing, ethereal mosses along the walls of the upper caverns of the maw. Then came the monsters. This was the most critical part of balancing a zone. The creatures had to be challenging, but not impossible for the target level range. They needed a variety of attack patterns and abilities to keep adventurers on their toes. For the beaches and cliffs, he designed the rock-shelled crabber, a large, aggressive crustacean with a pincer attack and a defensive shell skill. They would be the zone's basic trash mob, a common sight that adventurers would learn to handle quickly. For the sea, he created shoals of razorfin piranha, fast-moving fish with a bleed-inducing bite, and the gloom jelly, a floating jellyfish that could inflict a paralysis poison. They would make navigating the waters of the bay a hazard in itself. Inside the sunken maw, he let his imagination run wilder. He designed the cave lurker, a pale reptilian creature that could cling to ceilings and ambush prey from above. He created the sonar bat, a flying creature that attacked with disorienting sonic screeches. Finally, every dungeon needed a boss. In the deepest chamber of the maw, a massive abyss where the whirlpool's currents converged, he conceptualized the zone's apex predator, bestiary design, Apex. Name, the Maw Kraken class, abyssal horror level, 25 core abilities. Crushing. Tentacles, ink cloud, abyssal roar, area of effect fear. Loot table, Kraken ink, rare alchemy reagent, abyssal pearl, crafting material, chance to drop, trident of the tides, rare magic weapon. He poured his remaining mana into the creation, and deep within the dungeon, the massive creature spawned. its conceptual form resolving into a terrifying reality of writhing tentacles and a single malevolent eye. He'd done it. The zone was complete. He had shaped the land, filled the seas, and populated it with life. He ran a final system diagnostic, his heart pounding. Zone designation, the Tide Eater's Coast. Final stability, 99.8%. Ecological balance, 97.4%. Adventurer Engagement Index, AEI. High projected QXP, accrual rate, +5 QXP ICE hour mandate. Objective. Complete. A wave of notifications washed over him. Mandate complete. Reward, 5,000 QXP. You have leveled up. You have leveled up. You are now level 7. Reward, Genesis Shard acquired. Reward, Tier 2. Design palettes unlocked. New skills acquired. Weather manipulation, minor. Magical flora cultivation. Advanced bestiary creation. The feeling was euphoric. He had not just succeeded, he had excelled. The QXP accrual rate was excellent for a C-tier zone. His new skills were game changers. He could now create rain, fog, and wind. He could design plants that produced mana potions or had defensive thorns. His bestiary options had expanded tenfold. He looked at the Genesis Shard in his inventory. It was a small crystalline object that seemed to contain a swirling galaxy. It was a tool of immense power, capable of infusing a creation with a depth and resonance he could only dream of. He decided to save it for something truly special. The system prompted him, finalize and release zone to the public. He clicked, yes. Back in the real world, on the Adventurers Guild boards in every city, a new notice would appear. A new land of adventure had been born, and no one would ever know the name of its creator. That was the anonymous life of a world forger, and for now, Elian was content with that. He had faced his crucible and emerged victorious. Fame for a world forger was a subtle thing. Elian's name wasn't sung in taverns, but his work began to acquire a reputation among those who truly mattered, the adventurers who risked their lives in his creations. The Tide Eater's Coast became a popular zone. Players praised its challenging but fair design, its breathtaking vistas, and the intricate layout of the sunken maw. His QXP accrual rate was steady and strong, a constant pleasant chime in the back of his mind. His newfound skills and higher level opened up more complex and rewarding mandates. He forged a mist-shrouded swamp filled with venomous flora and lumbering bog beasts. He sculpted a crystalline cave network where the ambient magic was so strong it caused random, wild spell effects. Each creation was a success, adding to his growing reputation within the guild and pushing him steadily towards the coveted rank of journeyman forger. It was during a routine system audit of his swamp zone, the Gloom Fen, that he first encountered the anomaly. He was reviewing the data streams, monster kill rates, adventurer traffic, resource depletion, when he noticed a corrupt data packet. It was small, almost insignificant, a string of garbled code that looked like digital static. He almost dismissed it as a random system hiccup, but his system lore attribute, now significantly higher, tingled with a sense of wrongness. He isolated the packet and ran a diagnostic. The results made a cold pit form in his stomach. It wasn't a random error. It was a piece of code, but it was written in a language that was fundamentally alien to the progenitor-based system. It was jagged, aggressive, and parasitic. When he cross-referenced it with the guild's archives, he found a single heavily redacted entry, code signature Blight C. The Blight was a boogeyman story whispered among forgers. It was a form of creation, but a twisted, cancerous one. Blighted zones didn't follow the rules of balance and stability. They were designed to be parasitic, to drain the system energy from adjacent zones, growing stronger as they choked the life out of their neighbors. They were the work of heretic forgers, those who had abandoned the guild's tenets in a search for forbidden power. Creating a blighted zone was the ultimate crime for their kind. Elian tracked the origin point of the corrupt packet. It had bled into his Gloomfen from an adjacent unclaimed shard. A piece of the world map that was supposed to be empty, gray void. He used his guild credentials to request satellite surveillance of the sector. The image that returned was horrifying. The shard designated Sector K8 was no longer empty. It had been transformed into a pulsating, sickly landscape of violet-gray sludge and crystalline, tooth-like growths. The air shimmered with a toxic purple haze. It was a tumor on the face of the world. Anomaly detected. Unauthorized forging. Activity. Zone designation. The Crystal Scab classification. Blight Zone. Tier C. Energy. Signature. Parasitic. Actively draining 0.5% of ambient system energy per hour from adjacent zones. Gloom Fen, Blackwood Forest. His creation was being leached. The corruption was slow, but if left unchecked, it would destabilize and eventually destroy the delicate ecosystem he had spent months building. More than that, the existence of such a place was an affront to his craft. A world forger's purpose was to create life and balance. This was the opposite, a monument to decay and theft. He immediately filed a report with the guild, detailing his findings. The response was swift and chilling. Guild alert. Heretic activity confirmed. Perpetrator. Unknown. Masking signature is of a high level. Directive. A formal guild cleansing protocol will be initiated. Estimated time to arrival of an Archforger unit. 3 standard weeks. Apprentice Elian is ordered to monitor the situation and take no direct action. Do not engage. Acknowledge receipt. 3 weeks. In 3 weeks, the Crystal Scab could do irreparable damage. It could level drain his entire zone, killing off the flora and fauna he had so carefully designed. He couldn't just sit and watch. The order to not engage was a sensible precaution. A direct confrontation between forgers was a messy, destructive affair, a battle of creation and uncreation that could shatter continents. But the heretic was hiding. They had built their parasitic engine and let it run on its own. Elian felt a surge of righteous anger. This wasn't just an attack on his work, it was an attack on the world itself. He looked at the Genesis shard, still sitting in his inventory. He had been saving it for a masterpiece, a grand A-rank dungeon or a new capital city. Using it on a countermeasure felt like a waste. But what good was a masterpiece in a world being eaten by cancer? A new plan began to form in his mind, one that was both reckless and elegant. The guild had told him not to engage the heretic. They hadn't told him he couldn't build something. The Crystal Scab was a parasitic ecosystem. What if he designed a predator? He pulled up the map. Between his Gloom Fen and the Blighted Zone was a small, unclaimed buffer shard, a blank slate he could petition to work on. He could forge a new zone there, one specifically designed not for adventurers, but for war. An ecosystem whose entire purpose was to seek out, consume, and purify the blight. It was an insane idea. It would require him to push his skills to their absolute limit, but it was better than doing nothing. He filed an emergency petition with the guild, requesting custodianship of the buffer shard. He coded the request carefully, classifying it as a preventative ecological barrier, avoiding any language that might suggest aggression. To his surprise, the automated system approved it instantly. The guild was too busy mobilizing its archforgers to worry about a low-level apprentice building a firewall. The buffer shard materialized in his workshop. It was small, barely a tenth the size of the Tide Eater's coast, but it would be enough. He opened his design interface, his fingers flying. Across the menus, he wasn't just building a new zone, he was forging a weapon. The core concept for his new creation was simple and aggressive, the Verdant Shield. It wouldn't be a zone for adventurers. There would be no quests, no treasure, no dungeons. Its adventurer engagement index would be 0. Its entire existence would be geared towards a single overarching function, to act as a symbiotic antibody for the world itself. He took the Genesis shard from his inventory. Its galaxy of light swirled, waiting. This was the moment. He designated it as the foundational core of the shard. Genesis shard consumed. Infusing shard with primordial resonance. Core concept, the Verdant Shield, has been elevated. All flora and bestiary creations on this shard will gain the purifier trait. The effect was immediate. The barren rock of the shard began to hum with an almost imperceptible energy. This wasn't just a blank slate anymore. It was fertile ground for a miracle. Elian's plan was twofold. First, he needed a defense. He used geological sculpting to create a massive, sheer mountain range on the side of the shard facing the crystal scab, a physical barrier of immense height and thickness he named the Aegis Peaks. Second, and more importantly, he needed an offense. He opened his magical flora cultivation skill, now a core part of his toolkit. He began to design the primary life form of his new ecosystem. Flora design, symbiotic purifier. Name, sunspore vine. Description, a rapidly growing, semi-sentient vine. It thrives by consuming tainted or corrupt system energy. Its root system actively seeks out and breaks down blighted earth, converting it back into fertile soil. Trait, purifier. He seeded the entire shard with the sunspore vines. They erupted from the humming rock, not as individual plants, but as a single interconnected network. They carpeted the valleys and scaled the Aegis Peaks, their leaves a vibrant, glowing green that stood in stark defiance of the purple haze from the scab next door. But the vines were just the first part of the system. They were the farmers, the terraformers. He needed soldiers. He opened the advanced bestiary creation menu, his mind racing. He needed creatures that would work in symbiosis with the vines. He designed the filter beetle, a small insectoid creature that would consume the toxic air of the blight and exhale purified, mana-rich oxygen, creating a clean environment for the vines to advance into. He designed the golems of Terra, hulking humanoid constructs not of stone, but of compacted living wood and soil from the shard itself, animated by the collective will of the Sunspore network. Their purpose was to be the vanguard, physically tearing down the blight crystals and clearing a path for the vines. Finally, he designed the ecosystem's heart, its queen. Bestiary design. Apex symbiote. Name, the Verdant Mother Class. Primal. Regent level 40 core abilities. One mind. Commands all creatures of the Verdant Shield. Spore Burst. Seeds new sunspore vines over a massive area. Purifying aura. Passively cleanses blight in a wide radius. Special. The Verdant Mother is directly linked to the Genesis Shard. As long as she lives, the Verdant Shield cannot be corrupted. He spawned her in the center of the shard, in a sacred grove protected by the tallest mountains. She was a magnificent creature, a fusion of woman and plant, her skin like bark, her hair like woven leaves, and her eyes glowing with the same green light as the vines. She was not a monster to be slain for loot. She was a guardian, the intelligent will driving his living weapon. The entire process took him 6 days of non-stop, frantic creation. He poured all of his mana, all of his focus, all of his QXP reserves into the project. He felt his own energy draining, but the shard's resonance, amplified by the Genesis shard, seemed to sustain him. On the 7th day, it was done. The Verdant Shield was alive. It was a complete, self-sustaining ecosystem designed for war. The golems patrolled the valleys, the beetles filled the air with a soft buzzing, and the Verdant Mother watched over it all, her consciousness linked to every leaf and root. The entire shard pulsed with a clean, vibrant, and fiercely protective energy. Now, for the final critical step. He used geological sculpting one last time. He opened a series of massive tunnels and passages through the base of the Aegis Peaks, creating doorways that led directly from the Verdant Shield into the crystal scab. He was opening the floodgates. The moment the passages were open, the sunspore vines sensed their purpose. Like an army surging from a fortress, the glowing green tendrils poured through the tunnels. The golems of Terra marched behind them, their heavy footfalls shaking the rock. Swarms of filter beetles flew ahead, their buzzing rising to a roar. The war for Sector K8 had begun, and Elian, its unseen general, could only watch and hope that his creation was strong enough. Elian monitored the invasion through his system interface, his point of view shifting between the golems of Terra like a commander overseeing a battlefield. The moment his creations crossed the threshold, they were assaulted by the scab's defenses. The heretic forger's designs were as twisted as Elian's were harmonious. Shards of jagged purple crystal erupted from the ground, attempting to impale the advancing vines. Creatures made of solidified sludge, the blight crawlers, swarmed the golems, their claws dripping with a substance that corroded living wood. But the verdant shield was purpose-built for this fight. The golems, animated by the will of the verdant mother, felt no pain or fear. They smashed the blight crawlers with their powerful fists, and for every chip of wood corroded from their bodies, the sunspore vines would weave new fibers to heal them. The synergy was perfect. The filter beetles were the true heroes of the initial assault. They descended in a shimmering cloud, inhaling the toxic haze that gave the scab its power. As the air was purified, the crystalline structures seemed to weaken, their malevolent glow dimming. The sunspore vines surged forward into the newly cleansed territory, their roots plunging into the corrupted soil and beginning the slow, arduous process of purification. It was a war of attrition, creation, against corruption. For every inch of ground the verdant shield claimed, the crystal scab fought back, spawning more monstrous defenders. Elian's QXP rate was fluctuating wildly. He gained massive bonuses for every patch of blight his ecosystem purified, but he lost points every time one of his golems was destroyed. He was walking a razor's edge. His entire career gambled on this unseen war. Days passed. The green of the verdant shield spread through the blighted lands like a healing balm. A third of the crystal scab had been reclaimed. Elian was exhausted, but exhilarated. His antibody was working. And then the heretic finally responded. The unknown, Forger, realizing their passive creation was being dismantled, took direct action. The entire crystal scab shuddered. In the center of the Blighted Zone, the remaining sludge and crystals began to coalesce, drawn together by an unseen force. They were building something new, something powerful, a glitch. It was the ultimate act of desperation for a heretic. A glitch was a hole in the system, a creature not of proper design but of chaotic, buggy code. They were unpredictable, immensely powerful, and utterly hostile to all forms of stable creation. The thing that rose from the heart of the scab was a monstrosity. It was a chaotic mess of shifting polygons and mismatched textures, a vaguely draconic shape that flickered in and out of existence. Its roar was a burst of pure digital static that caused Elian's interface to momentarily crash. Warning: system anomaly. Detected. Corrupted worm glitch has spawned. Error. Cannot read stats. Entity exists outside standard parameters. The glitch immediately tore into Elian's forces. It spat a beam of raw, uncoded energy that didn't just destroy the golems, it deleted them, leaving nothing behind. The sunspore vines withered and died in its presence, its chaotic aura too toxic for even their purifying nature. The verdant shield was being pushed back. The heretic was sacrificing their entire creation to power this single overwhelming weapon. It was a scorched earth tactic, and it was working. Elian felt a moment of despair. He had nothing that could fight that thing. His golems were too weak, his vines too vulnerable. But then he saw a new data stream light up in his interface. It was coming from the verdant mother. She was communicating with him, not in words, but in pure concepts. She showed him the glitch, its chaotic energy. Then, she showed him the Genesis shard at her core, its energy of pure, stable creation. The answer was obvious. Order against chaos. She was the only one who could fight it. Go, Elian whispered, giving her the command through his interface. From her sacred grove, the verdant mother rose. The entire network of sunspore vines pulsed, with a brilliant green light as she drew upon their collective power. She glided from the verdant shield into the blighted lands, a figure of serene and resolute power amidst the corruption. She met the corrupted worm glitch in the center of the dying scab. The confrontation was not one of physical blows. It was a battle of fundamental forces. The glitch lashed out with its deleting beams and static roars. The verdant mother simply stood her ground, her purifying aura radiating outwards, a sphere of pure, stable creation energy. The glitch's chaotic attacks hit the aura and dissolved, their unstable code smoothed over and neutralized by the powerful, orderly resonance of the Genesis shard. The worm glitch, a creature of pure chaos, could not exist in the presence of pure order. It began to unravel, its form flickering more rapidly, its polygons breaking apart. With a final, silent scream that tore through the fabric of the code, the glitch imploded, vanishing completely. The moment it was gone, the heretic's presence vanished. Their masking signature disappeared from the system. They had cut their losses and fled. The crystal scab was broken. Without its power source and its ultimate defender, the remaining corrupted land was quickly consumed and purified by the advancing sunspore vines. A flood of system notifications, the likes of which Elian had never seen, filled his vision. Threat neutralized. Corrupted worm glitch has been purged. Blight Zone, the crystal scab has been fully purified. Unique action performed neutralized a heretic-level threat using a subordinate class proxy ecosystem. Massive QXP bonus awarded, 150,000 QXP. You have leveled up. X15. You are now level 22. Your class has been upgraded. Apprentice World Forger. Journeyman World Forger. New title acquired, the Purifier. A message has arrived from the Forgers Guild High Council. Elian sat back, stunned into silence by the cascade of rewards. He was a journeyman. He had jumped nearly 20 levels in a matter of weeks. His new title shimmered with a golden light. He opened the message from the High Council. It was a summons. They wanted to see him. In person. They wanted to know how an apprentice had single-handedly won a war that should have required a unit of their most powerful archforgers. His days of anonymity were over. He looked at the verdant shield on his map, now a vibrant, glowing testament to his skill. He hadn't just built another zone for adventurers. He had built a cure. He had defended the world not with a sword, but with the ultimate weapon, creation itself.